Here we go, and I'm going to launch the show. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies? Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the as yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, I am Rob casting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 871. This is a very special episode of Robservations. As you know, we have an evangelical fervor about the movie-going experience, the theatrical movie-going experience on every level. Talk all you want about Barbenheimer, and by the way, go out and see Barbie and go out and see Oppenheimer and 70mm and IMAX, wherever you want to see it. But go to the theaters, buy some popcorn, buy refreshments, take your family, go to that double feature and meme the hell out of it. Yes. But there are many other films in theaters from many different countries, many different languages, many different kinds of people. And I would encourage you to go to your local art house cinema. I grew up going to my art house cinema in Seattle, actually many. The Grand Illusion, the Guild 45th, the Neptune. My God, did I see a lot of movies there. And you should go. This episode is about that experience. This episode is about a movie. Well, first of all, I should say this episode is sponsored by Kino Lorber. And Kino Lorber is one of the great home video labels. Now, I know I just spoke about the theatrical experience, but Kino Lorber, they put out silent films. They put out documentaries. They put out films. I just watched an Israeli TV series that Kino Lorber brought to my front door. And finally, after promising for a year, Kino Lorber released William Friedkin's great To Live and Die in L.A., a movie I'm obsessed with, in 4K just this week. They are having right now their summer sale. And if I might make a suggestion, the great director John Frankenheimer has a double feature on Kino Lorber's 4K, including The Manchurian Candidate, which has one of the great villainesses in all of cinema history. Angela Lansbury plays her. I'm just going to leave it at that. Bring your deck of cards, watch The Manchurian Candidate, and after that, follow it up with Frankenheimer's amazing action film, Ronin, with Robert De Niro. And while you're at it, pick up this documentary on DVD, or you can now watch it on streaming, only in theaters. A movie that is deceptively, you think it's about one thing, and then I guarantee you will be crying your eyes out by the end of this movie about the triumph of a family, a triumph of a small business, and a triumph of the movie-going experience. And to tell you all about it, I have the gentleman that this movie was made by and is about. First of all, please welcome director, producer, and executive producer, Raphael Sbarge. Raphael, thank you for coming on Robservations. And I cannot tell you what a great thrill it is. I've been watching you as an actor for 40 years. It's the 40th anniversary of Risky Business, but you've been on every episodic TV show ever. And to see you transition into director, producer, I guess writer, to make such a wonderful documentary is absolutely fantastic. And I can't tell you how much I love the film. The only thing I love more than this movie is the subject of this movie. And I'm going to call him legendary. He doesn't think he is, but he is. The legendary Greg Laemmle. Greg, first of all, I moved to L.A. in 1988, 2 blocks up from the Royal Theater, across from the New Art, across from Dolores Restaurant, simply because And I went to Sci-Fi Academy screenings at the Royal on Sunday mornings with Dr. Reed, rest in peace. And I even have a funny story about Carl Laemmle and my grandfather's best friend, Jimmy Morton, but I'll save that for later. Welcome, gentlemen, to Robservations. I have to say, I love this movie. And I want to know, I read the press notes, but Raphael, what made you decide to make a film about the Laemmle family?
You know, there's, I mean, the simple answer is that there's a wall that is featured in the film. It's at the Royal, which you've probably seen. It's this wonderful wall put together by this artist named Peter Sullivan that really kind of lays out this astounding legacy story. The family is theater royalty, and the deeper you go into it, the more you realize how this entire art form has been affected by this one singular family in so many ways. Not only Carl Laemmle, who's their first cousin, but Max and Kurt, who then ran the theaters, and it just it was a well that just kept there was more and more depth the more I looked at it. That was one aspect of this. The other aspect of this is that I am a filmmaker that was the beneficiary of Greg's support of filmmakers, and I have met so many filmmakers in Los Angeles who said, "Oh my God, I owe my career, I owe my Oscar, I owe my the opportunities that came to me or I decided to become a director because of the London theaters." This has just been it's hard to even sort of put into words how much influence they've had in so many ways, just by virtue of the caring that's been extended by to the people who make these movies, particularly at a very vulnerable moment when you've made your film and you want to actually sort of find an audience. Those two things, the legacy and then my experience with Greg, again, with him as the owner of this theater, those two things merged to sort of spark the idea, along with this wall. From there, I guess as they say, all hell broke loose.
Well, Greg, let me ask you, had you ever foreseen that you and your family, your lovely wife, your sons, your father, would suddenly become the subject of a film?
Well, look, over the years, we've shown a number of documentaries and worked with a number of documentary filmmakers. And, almost every one of them at some point would comment, gee, somebody should make a movie about Laemmle theaters. Raphael was the first person who walked in and said, I'm going to make the movie about Laemmle theaters. And having worked with him and seen some of his previous films, I thought, he was the right person to tell the story.
One of the things, I didn't expect this to become a suspense thriller. But, I think one of the great things, Raphael, about making documentaries, and any documentarian worth their salt will tell you, you set out to do one thing, and then the story you end up telling unfolds in front of you, not knowing what that story might necessarily wind up being. What was it like for you to start out making this particular film, and you're already dealing with a heightened sense of where's the business going to go, and then COVID hits, and suddenly you're making a disaster movie, in a way? Can you? And by the way, if you could, is there any way you could up the volume of your microphone, Raphael, just a little bit?
Yes, you bet.
And because I mean, you're watching this film, you get, first of all, the Laemmle family is so, I guess you'd call them adorable, because they are, all of them, and you really, I mean, as characters, I feel like I'm watching this heartwarming, movie about cinema. It's like Cinema Paradiso, but in documentary form, and then it turns into this. Oh my God! So, what was it like for you starting out to make one film? And if you could tell us about how was the story that unfolded before you? How did that affect you as a filmmaker?
Right. Well, I mean, look, there's two kinds of docs, right? There's the kind of doc where you know what you're going to make, where you basically go in and you have a very specific kind of plan as to, this is the story, this is what I want to tell, and this is how I'm going to do it. And it's a, it's a much less sort of dangerous and experimental way to go. This was we had no idea where we were headed, and we started with this. Again, this family. The family was always the center of this, but at the end of the day, what really what we did was, I guess what you I guess what you hope for. I mean, look, the story. I had faith in the story that it would ultimately reveal itself, but the fact is that we really did take a leap of faith. I had someone say in a Q&A, like, how amazing that you had the budget to actually schedule that pandemic and deepen your second act. And, the whole thing was, I had another filmmaker recently who's also a documentary filmmaker like you, and she just wrote me and said, thank you for making a film that you had no idea where the ending was and trusting that it would be there. It's a dangerous game. I don't know how to say it any other way. It could have gone any number of ways. But as we were working on the film, in addition to what specifically was happening, that is with this family and in their journey and the challenges that they were facing with this, third, fourth generation business, there also was a larger zeitgeist that was happening. And this happened completely, certainly out of our control. And that was, in this case, this question, this larger question about what's the future of movie theaters? Where are we going? What will happen? Where, why do movie theaters matter? Do they matter? Why should we care about them? And then we had this day and date thing with the studios where they were releasing movies online and in theaters, which, again, continued to sort of, beg the question, well, why do we have movie theaters? And so this was going on kind of literally, this was in the zeitgeist, as it were, as we were trying to kind of make sense of this other thing. And because of that, it really, it coincided with this family in a way that I could never have predicted.
Well, Greg, I have to ask you, it's one thing to decide to be the subject of a documentary, but what I thought was really interesting was how involved your family was. And your family is very much a part of it. And I myself, I'm Jewish, and I really also like the fact that it celebrated Judaism. I mean, I know it was an undercurrent to everything. It wasn't overt. Well, I guess it was a little overt, but I really enjoyed the fact that I was watching a Jewish family. It was kind of like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but about the movie business and a Jewish family. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really wonderful. And the relationship that you and your wife have was like this heartwarming romance. It was this romantic story. You guys met at, I believe, summer camp, and that was such a, so I'm watching this like almost a family romantic comedy that became a romantic tragedy. And the great adversity. What was it like? Was it invasive having Raphael come in and start making this documentary when things were turning? Like, did you ever want him to turn off the cameras and go, bruh, come back when things are a little bit more stable?
No, I mean, we never wanted to. Well, that wasn't our decision. Ultimately, life was moving on, and we, the choice was: did Raphael want to continue to make the movie? And if he was going to continue to make the movie, we were going to try and find a way to be as honest as we possibly could with the story, as it developed. Had no control over the process. I didn't see the film until it premiered at the Santa Barbara Film Festival.
Really? You didn't see any of it?
No, not at all. Well, sizzle reel.
Well, hang on. I gotta ask Raphael. Did you wait to show it to him until it was done?
That was Greg's decision. I mean, really, at some point I was, before we went, kind of live with it, as it were, I said, do you want to see this? And he said repeatedly, I don't want to interfere in this process with you. I don't want to be somehow interfere with your edit, with your vision. It was scary to show it to him when I finally did show it to him, as it were. But it was public. I mean, it was his decision to see it in front of an audience for the first time.
Greg, did you have your whole family there?
My wife and one of my sons was with me for that screening at Santa Barbara, and then a few days later we had a screening for a lot of friends, family, and so forth in Los Angeles, employees.
What was
Uh,
it like for the two of you to see that for the first time?
there were moments that were really hard. I mean, first, my wife did see it a little bit before me. A few months, she just couldn't, contain herself. um, but yeah, I mean, there are things in the film that maybe I wish weren't there, or had been presented differently. I've over viewing it a number of times. I've grown to become very comfortable with the way the story is told. Um, but yes, there were a lot of emotional moments when my dad saw it for the first time and kind of broke down.
Wow. I mean, I can understand because it really, it doesn't necessarily play like a documentary. It plays like you're watching a narrative feature at some point. It kind of transitions. I mean, you're feeling it. And I thought, Raphael, you did just, I know how hard it is to craft a documentary, but you did something rare in that it works as a documentary, but it also works as something much bigger than just documenting. I mean, it gets you right in the heart, and that's a hard thing to do. Did
That's
you when you were making the film, crafting it, was that something that you saw emerging from the footage? I mean, it must have been fascinating to as you started one and to watch what you were getting. Was that apparent to you during the editorial process, just how emotional it was becoming?
Yeah, I mean, particularly this. I mean, the stakes. It's a huge stakes story, right? I mean, this is you've got Greg's. You got the Laemmle family. Really, you feel the legacy. You feel, um, I've spoken to other people who have family businesses, and what this sense of kind of the weight of legacy. We think, particularly when everything's at risk. When you really understand who this family is, and you really understand the magnitude of what they've done and what they've contributed as in real time. So the tricky part was being able to weave it back and forth, right? So, I, I starting with what's happening, kind of sort of the background of who we have, and then essentially going back and seeing kind of who you know who Greg, whose shoulders he was standing on, and then whose shoulders they were standing on, that is Max and Kurt, and understanding what that is. And I mean, look, I'm also, my father's family was Jewish. I was raised primarily by my father's family, and I was, they were also immigrant Jews from Ukraine. They came and opened a schmata business in New York, in the garment district, and in the Bronx. And I, for me, the touchstone for this, when you had all these fabulously, sexy Hollywood kind of names and things, and Valentino, and and Universal, and all this, to me, it was always about the family. It was the family, the family, the family, right? And the family is what was kind of the spine, as it were, of the story. And so I kept saying to myself, if I could just connect to the family, then I know that the other stuff, which is fantastic, just even in like as a bullet point, it's fantastic. That will sit on on this spine, as it were. And so the fact that Greg, I mean, it's a unique situation, right? Because Greg, sorry to talk about you in the third person, but here you are. Uh, uh, Greg had such a deep intrinsic understanding of what a good documentary is about, which is about telling the truth and about being honest and coming to it, right? And that, it's really uncanny for a documentary subject to have such an inherent understanding of film and documentary filmmaking, in a way. Maybe not having made one, but sort of understand what's compelling about it. And so look, I'm an actor, right? So what we train for as an actor is you work and work and work and work and work and work and work, so that you can actually learn how to not work and how to not be self-conscious, right? So that you're not thinking about what you're doing when you're doing it, so you can be free, right? Greg has the most unbelievably sense of freedom and just ability to be himself in front of the camera in a way that was sort of uncanny, just be present in a way, so that it felt, in many cases, like when we were filming, like we were literally like we were alone in a room with them. There was no one else there, and that's something that Greg just brings to the experience, which again you can't that was just sort of the remarkable, perhaps his commitment, perhaps his understanding of Doc, but also just who he is as a person, and that translated.
Greg, I mean, I think the joys of the film is your family, your sons, your wife, your father. How did they feel about being the subjects of a documentary? Were they as cool with it as you?
Yes, everybody was cool. Look. I mean, obviously the story went a different direction, but when we started the process, we were really proud. I mean, it was just after the Lincoln Plaza Cinemas had closed in New York, and that was a, huge rip in the fabric of art film exhibition in the United States. And there was a level of pride, misplaced as it may have been, but pride that, that we weren't going to let something like that happen in Los Angeles, that we were, had created the ability to stay long-term and not necessarily, be controlled by real estate forces and so on and so forth. So there was pride. Yeah, I did, we are an immigrant family, and at a time when you look back at 2017 and 2018, when immigration was front and center, I wanted to, tell us, at least present the story of how immigration has, influenced the United States and been a boon in so many ways to our country. And yeah, I think everybody was really proud, of having the opportunity to tell this story. It's, my father, who continued the business after he took over from his grandfather, and even going back further to my great aunt Elise, who was present when the theater started, when her husband and my grandfather, his brother, started the business in 1938.
That was amazing. Hearing from her was unbelievable. To have that, talk about a blessing. Wow. What a pistol she was.
And the footage that we found of her coming into the New York Harbor and Carl Laemmle at her wedding, astounding. A family member had found it, and Deborah Blum, who really literally was like in a case by the door. They were going to throw it out, and her husband said, we should do something with this. And talk about gold. That footage, and then also Bob as a little kid in Switzerland, and just astounding.
I mean, look, in 2017, my wife and I went back to Laupheim, Germany, which is where Carl was born. The Laemmle family roots for generations. So I'm sure somewhere in the background that was a something that motivated me in having this story told, and that connection to generations and generations.
I mean, it was that's what made it such a rich, I think, viewing experience. And I can't recommend. I mean, I'm not overselling it either. It's there's so many things that are going on in this documentary. You think you're getting, as I said, I thought I was getting one thing, and I thought it was going to be about the Los Angeles theaters or something. I had no idea. I didn't read. I just put it in, and it really was like any great documentary. It really takes you on a journey. Raphael, I have to ask, one of the things I really also loved, is the way you shot the interviews. A lot of sit-down interviews are just like this, but you had these great widescreen compositions that, I mean, maybe it was intentional or not, it must have been, but you really felt a sense of cinema. It's hard to get talking heads, but the way you shot using the widescreen frame was every time you cut back to one of these interviews, I'm like, yes, I get it. This is about widescreen movie making, which right. I loved.
Yeah, I'm so glad you get that. Thank you as a filmmaker. I mean, it was 2:3:9, right? So it's in that wide format, and then I did a daring thing, I guess, because I wasn't sure how the directors initially would respond to it. But we did interviews with some fancy directors, right, like Cameron Crowe and James Ivory and Ava DuVernay and others on Zoom.
But that also accentuated, like, oh, you could be widescreen in a theater, or you could be streaming. And it was definitely part of the whole thing.
When James Ivory says, if I hear my movies in a theater, of course I want to see it on a big screen, and we're seeing it on the
fantastic.
The moment of inspiration was to kind of put it on a laptop in that gorgeous theater, and then use that as background and context, because hopefully it then becomes kind of a metaphor for what we're talking about. But
Oh, I think it did.
on a small screen, right? So it has the opportunity to kind of really speak larger. You know?
No, it was definitely there. I mean, it looks great. Now I have to ask you one more thing. There's a section in the film where you have all of these movie posters of all of the 50 years of art cinema and every one of those I think I own every one of those movies. But I was thinking in my head, did you have to license? And then at the end you had everything that you'd license and all that. Did you have to license every one of those posters from the distributors to show it in the film?
No, thank goodness. I have a wonderful, wonderful attorney named Michael Donaldson, who literally wrote the book on fair use. I actually even have it here on my desk. And it's the book, and he signed it to me. But he was able to kind of go through and able to sort of determine what was fair use. And in the context of what we were doing, it was fair use because we're speaking about, well, for all the reasons that are obvious, this family, obviously, and their commitment to these films.
Well, and also the choices of the films in that was beautifully done. I was like, wow, you nailed it. That was incredible. I don't know if you curated that together, who picked those films, but that was aces. It was just a cool thing. So and another thing I really liked was the Marquees on the Royal during the pandemic. Cutting to those, first of all, no one does Gallows humor like Jews, and I'm like, yes, and that was so funny. I was dying because you guys talked about how you talked in movie quotes, and then the titles that you chose was that you, Greg? I mean, who those and that was so genius. And I wish because I was in Pasadena during the pandemic. I never drove by the Royal. I'm like, I wish I could have seen that and been driving by every day or whenever. I don't know how many times you change it, but
how did explain what you did so that people who
So as we were shutting down, the question came up: what do you do with the theater marquees? And do you just put up an inspirational message? Do you just and someone came up with, or I guess I came up with the idea that we would use movie titles to reflect, certain things, and what our current situation. So Now Playing was our current situation, and Coming Soon was where we thought either hoped things would go or were worried that things would go. I think I can't remember exactly if the first one was, but it was probably Apocalypse Now and A Better Tomorrow. And that just continued. Most of them were, I think most of them were probably my choices, but my wife, and friends definitely contributed some.
Okay.
And as it was nothing to do and really no way to communicate with the public, it became something cathartic for me, to still be able to put out something about movie love and movie appreciation. And put that out there.
Raphael, did you know he was going to do that, and how genius was it that you got it on camera?
Yeah, so I mean, well, look, if you go to Instagram, I think you can look up Greg Laemmle and you'll see all of the ones that he has. There were more that we didn't use because we couldn't. I mean, we could make a whole movie about that, but it played directly into this theme of what, in this case, this is a family that really has so absorbed movies as a sort of a inner consciousness, as it were, that they communicate through movie titles and through movie moments that then are able to kind of crystallize something about wherever you are at the moment in a way that no word could, no singular sentence could, and that's a theme through the movies. That's the way as this is described, the kids and their dad and their mom, are able to kind of out quote each other, as it were, in this contest they have. And then also in the very last scene, of course, where Greg, refers to a movie, which I won't spoil, but essentially it played right into that theme, and it's beautiful and it's eloquent and it says so much. And again, it just speaks to this man and how how much movies are a part of his soul, really.
Well, another theme, I wanted to touch on this, you know, I've often thought that we sort of live. The 20th century was the century of cinema as the great art form, and now, you know, you hear a lot of filmmakers in the imagination connoisseur geek spaces that I exist in a lot. Everyone gets mad when Martin Scorsese comes out and says something like, you know, the comic book movies are not cinema, and then everybody gets all their knickers in a twist or a bunch or something, and I'm like, look, what he's saying is, and when I was growing up, like, no one's going to see revivals of Last Year at Marienbad. When I was growing up, everybody knew what Last Year at Marienbad was. You know, everybody knew, the big forbidden movie when I was a kid was Solo, the 120 Days of Sodom. And when the Neptune played it, it's like, oh my God, they're playing it in a theater and we all have to go. And we were all suitably disgusted, like, no wonder. You know, and I had to see Tarkovsky's Stalker. I'm like, I got to see it in a theater, you know. And I spent my junior high and high school years, and growing up in Seattle, we had the Seattle International Film Festival. I started going to at 12 and would buy, you know, an annual pass for my birthday every year. And I grew up seeing world cinema, you know, and seeing all cinema. And, you know, you had to go see Truffaut, you know, you had to see the 400 Blows in a theater. You had to go see Godard's work. And nowadays, none of my friends and people in the film space don't watch art cinema. I mean, some do, but they don't. It was, when I was growing up, it was all part of it. You had to see everything. You couldn't just go see the latest sci-fi epic. And I think one of the underlying things about your film, the documentary, is how much it didn't hit it head on, but you were celebrating all of the classic art house films of the last, call it 75 years, well, 80 years since the legacy of the Laemmle family. And so you subtly were kind of saying, look, here's an entire strata of movies that nobody is watching, especially not in theaters, because, you know, in the 50s and 60s, going to see an Antonioni film was part of, if you lived in New York, you know, if the Ennui trilogy opened, if you're going to watch La Notte, La Ventura, and The Eclipse, you had to go see it in a theater, and it was as much a part of culture as going to the Met or going to the MoCA or MoMA or whatever. And now, and that's what Laemmle theaters did. I mean, in Pasadena, if you wanted to see an art house, you just knew it opened at the Laemmle. I mean, that's where you're going to go. How do you both feel about the state of cinema in America today? And I mean, one of the things about streaming, unfortunately or fortunately, is that Netflix is bringing world cinema, world television to American audiences. They've invested, most of their audience is outside the United States, so we're getting television shows from Japan and Korea and Spain and France. How important is our legacy art house? I mean, the Laemmle's theaters are still here, thank God. You've still got, even in theaters right now, you're showing the French remake of One Cut of the Dead, the Japanese film that was, and it's called Final Cut. It's in Laemmle's theaters right now. And how important is this now to our culture of 2023? Is art is
Greg, I'm gonna let you take that.
You know, I mean, you look. I think. Well, look, this weekend is a perfect example of how art house and independent cinema is still really important to our, you know, both our art culture and our general culture. I mean, you were talking about Barbenheimer. There is no Barbenheimer without art house cinema, because Christopher Nolan comes from the art house. We showed Following, we showed, of course, Memento, but, you know, there were films before that. And this is a filmmaker that may not necessarily, you know, be making the films that he's making, be making Oppenheimer without that start. And of course, Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, you know, coming from, you know, the DIY cinema of the 2000s. Even last week with Christopher McQuarrie, screenwriter of Usual Suspects, you know, and all these people bring, you know, at some level, I think, something from their indie roots into these large, big budget Hollywood films, and bring some of the subversiveness of their roots to these films and make them better.
Right.
You know, than just something, a product that is crafted. I don't mean to deny the impetus behind making these big budget films. We know that the studios are making them to make money, but the people that are making these movies have something to say, and it's just another format for them to reach an audience.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still think that luckily in LA you have people like Quentin Tarantino bought the Vista, and it's being renovated, and another theater I went to, the movies that theater is actually in the movie True Romance that he wrote, that Tony Scott directed, so of course he had to buy it, and we still have a vibrant between the Laemmle chain, and most of your theaters are still around.
All of our locations reopened after the pandemic. Yeah, we're not operating all of them. Some of them have transferred ownership or operation, but they're all still open. That's not the case everywhere in the country. I mean, when we were screening in Berkeley, it was just as, we were screening at the last commercial movie theater in Berkeley, at the Elmwood.
Wow.
And when we were screening at the Roxy in San Francisco, it was just after, some major theaters had shut down. There is a problem. I'm not going to deny that, but I think it's, to use the term transitory. You can't talk about the current state of exhibition without talking about the pandemic. But I still feel confident about the future of moviegoing, and I think these movie theaters, commercial and art house, are going to be really important moving forward.
One of the things I just want to jump in and say is that we Rob, you are aware of Laemmle and the theaters, and obviously its tradition and its meaning, and its legacy. But there are many people, perhaps in your audience, who have never been to a Laemmle, or maybe they've never been to Los Angeles, right? And the question that I faced as I was sort of doing this was, how do we tell a story about a sort of very specific family and a very specific theater, and still have it be able to sort of speak, in a way, hopefully universally. We played. I mean, we're now on DVD, and that's what we get to kind of celebrate. And we played 80 theaters all over the country and internationally, and we did so very specifically because first of all, you couldn't have a movie called Only in Theaters, only on streaming. But in addition to that, the idea was to be able to kind of take this out to other cities and really let this story speak. And what we found in some faraway places, like Bethlehem, PA, for example, was that this story was absolutely their story. They had their version of a Laemmle, or they had these kinds of challenges, or they faced, are looking at some of these larger questions about, not just. I mean, this isn't a movie ultimately about theaters against streaming. It's so much more complex than that, and it's certainly not a pandemic movie. That section is actually only 6 minutes of the movie. We did that on purpose to kind of not overwhelm, but it is ultimately a sort of a larger sort of question about what's at stake, and what do we have, and what do these theaters mean, and what do we potentially lose if they're not there, and that's in every single city in the US and elsewhere. That's hopefully what this does.
Well, to speak to that too, I also, like you talk about, Greg, the immigrant experience, but you are the every family. I think that any family in America or around the world could watch this movie, see either themselves or people they know, because it was about what is the meaning of, what is the meaning of family? You see a husband and wife that clearly love each other. You see great kids. You see a father, and you see a business. And it could be any business. It could be like you said, the schmata business. It could be the rag trade in New York. I mean, it could be whatever you're talking about. So it really appeals to anyone, if you like movies or don't like movies, or you're not a big moviegoer. This film still works, and it works as a family drama. It works as a love story. It works as a testament to a family legacy for the 20th century. That was one of the things that I thought was so surprising about, by the way, the movie. You can get the physical media copy from Kino Lorber. They're having a sale. There's summer sale right now. And what's cool is there are special features. Raphael does a great audio commentary on the film. And it's that's why I think you really nailed it. And it was a much richer. I was very surprised by how affecting the movie itself was. I didn't know that that's what we were in for. And from that sense, it was the greatest kind of film going experience. Not to oversell it, but it really was. I mean, Elizabeth and I were like, "Oh my God, they better pull through." I mean, it really was, and the way it's structured, it's like this great. If you made this if you went from watching like the Lords of Dogtown documentary that Stacy Peralta made about Dogtown skateboarding in Venice,
Yeah.
great thing. But then you could turn it into a narrative feature. You could, I mean, Greg, somebody could play you in the feature narrative version of this, and it would work. I mean, that's why I think it was.
I don't think anyone could be as neurotic as I am.
But no, I think it really worked. Now, let me ask you both: are you optimistic about the future of movie going in the country and around the world? Because it seems like, I remember I worked in home video when I was right after my bar mitzvah, and because I got a VCR, it was like the first, and I was in this video store, and these people, I never left. And these guys gave me a job. They're like, "Kid, you never leave the video store. Why don't?" Because it was the only video store in Seattle, and the guy who owned it started the Video Software Dealers Association of America, and that was my first job. And they were saying back then, home video is going to be the death of cinema. And even as a 13-year-old, I'm like, no, it's turning everyone into movie freaks. You can now curate your own film festival and follow directors, and that's kind of what happened, And so cinema has survived. It's like you touched on. What happened with television, coming in the 40s and 50s, late 40s. And so, I think that there is a future. Is there a future for theaters?
Yes, 100%.
And art house cinema?
Yeah, I think there's a future for art house cinema. I think look, we had this great experiment. The bean counters at some of the studios who said, "Oh, let's just go day and date. We'll save on marketing costs, and we'll make as much money or more." And they had this great opportunity to experiment with that in 2021, and the results were that it was a failure.
Yeah. Millions were lost.
Yeah. So the theatrical window is incredibly important for the for the financial. We're going to talk about film for a second as a commodity, which I hate to do, but it takes money to make movies, and people want to make that money back in most cases. And the studios experimented with this day and date process. It did not work. They are back to providing their films with a robust theatrical window, and that's going to once we get through some supply chain issues, which of course are now going to be. We'll have a problem with film because of the strike. But commercial movie going is back. The art house is having a little bit of a tougher time coming back, but I think that will happen in time. Now, is every movie theater going to survive? Is every movie theater circuit going to survive? Perhaps not. I mean, individual soldiers don't make it through the war, but the war is won.
Well, I mean, look, I can't imagine living in a city without the Laemmle theater chain. And just as an aside, I love the fact that at Laemmle theaters you can get the flavored popcorn toppings, because that's something that when I'd go to the Laemmle in Pasadena, I'm always, ooh, I wonder which toppings I'm going to use today. That was just a little thing that a little touch that you guys did that was always appreciated. Well, I think that. What would you guys say? I mean, Raphael, going through this entire experience, what surprised you the most about embarking on this adventure and then finally completing the film? What was the thing that you might have learned or taken away from this that you might not have expected when you started the process?
I mean, I had no idea that I'd be working on it for 2.5 years. That's for sure. That was I never in a million years imagined that. What I've been surprised and really gratified is, your response and your response, which has been echoed by others, which is that this family moved them, and that it plays like a thriller, and it's it's all real. There's nothing doctored there. It's all it's how we put it together, but it's all there, and that we then all get to, hopefully at the end of it, get to ask the questions about what matters, what's the future of cinema, what evolved. And this was it makes me very gratified, I guess is the word, just that there's a sort of out of it, sort of a cause, sort of a sense of kind of mission gets really defined, which is really why, like, we read headlines like, so and so is making this, or so and so's down, or this is and you get these kind of splashes of ink, but they don't really give you any. They don't give you any blood, as it were, right? And so the story of being able to tell this, family story about who aren't just movie theater owners, but these people, this family, the Laemmles have done so much for the art form to really understand, what's at risk when you see it through their eyes. In a way, what I had always hoped for, but now I'm profoundly grateful that it came together. As you know, as a filmmaker, sometimes it's like, trying to herd cats. You never know if they're going to, get if the story will come together. But the story that did come together is this sort of, has been sort of an additional rallying cry for those of us who love movies. And I've had friends say, I can't wait to get back to the movies, and it's only going to be Laemmle theaters. People outside of LA have said, "Oh my God, I really got to get back," or like, "This is wonderful. What a wonderful reminder." Like, I understand. Like, I mean, and again, I don't care how big your television is. At the end of the day, what a movie does is it creates an experience. It's real estate dedicated to really you being taken and really traveling into this other place. I'm no interruptions, with a crowd that basically amplifies the emotion, that, the laughs, the cries, the screams. And you get to come in as strangers and leave as friends, as it were. We have all been suffering from chronic loneliness and from depression and anxiety, and we know that we're social animals. So finding places where we can connect and be social, even if we're just in proximity, these are important things, and these are all the sort of the kind of the so-called secondary things that a movie theater brings. In addition to the fact that if they're family businesses and or neighborhood theaters, there's an emotional quotient which is so profound, honestly, and not just for hard wrung movie, diehard movie lovers like you, but for people who are even more casual movie theaters. Like, God, I love going to that theater. That theater, I grew up there. Or that's and that, sorry, there's that tangent where you go like, oh, that movie, I remember what theater I saw it in.
Yeah.
Watching streaming, you don't necessarily go like, oh yeah, what part of my couch was I? It's all. It has the space is such a defining character or element of the experience of the movie, and so to be able to tell that, I mean, I can say that, and you can preach it, and you can sing it, but to be able to tell it through this family and through the vantage of this family, that makes me so happy and so gratified, because it is obviously in my heart, and it's something I feel deeply about. But it's wonderful that translates.
Greg, I guess I would ask you, having agreed to go through this experience, gone through it, and have had it documented by somebody else, and you like you said, you trusted Raphael to make a film, and on the other side of it, having gone through this experience, what are your feelings about it now? And having gone through it now, I mean, I'm sure you wish that, boy, I really wish this part of my life wasn't documented, but how do you feel about looking back on the experience? You've loved movies your whole life. Now there's a great movie made about you and your family that's really celebratory. But what's that experience like looking back for you? What does it mean to you now?
Well, I'm just, I'm honored and proud that the story has been documented so well, and that it's there for people to see. I mean, Raphael he refers to it as the hero's journey, which I dispute all the time. I guess one of the more gratifying things about showing it, not just audiences, but obviously other exhibitors who were able to see their own struggle in getting reopened, so that, for the entire industry, that, it potentially served as a kind of rallying cry. Yes, we can reopen, we can survive this, and it's going to take a lot of hard work and commitment, but we're gonna stay because we love what we do, and we don't want to give up.
I love that. Listen, we've got a question coming in from some viewers, and one of my favorite channel viewers is a woman named Science Lady. That's what she goes by, and she says, "I think the foundation you have set up, Green Wish, is interesting. Would be fascinated to hear more about it, and good luck for other future projects."
Thank you. Yeah, Greenwish was an environmental organization that I began with Ed Begley Jr. and Rochelle Carson Begley, his wife, and Sharon Lawrence. And my idea was essentially to be able to kind of find ways to support as many local organizations as I could. And so we figured out to be able to nonprofit, and we opened chapters all around the country. And you could do a pop-up nonprofit with us giving you the tools, free banking and everything, and you could, with tens of dollars, you could create a nonprofit and then create money, fundraise and put the money back into your community. That was the whole concept, and it was it did well. It got too big because I had some other being a dad and then having an acting career and everything else, and it just became too much. So I had to sort of shift it, and now what we've done is Greenwish has essentially sort of taken all the board has remained, but we did create a bunch of content when we were also opening these chapters, and the idea is creating now with conscience. So this is telling stories that have a humanist and deeper story ideas, and that speak to sort of a range of things. Greenwish is has worked for me as a filmmaker for people who want to help feel the vision of the story, as it were, and want to contribute to it, and it helps me get the film made, and so it's a component of having made this film.
Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen, both for being here. But before I let you go, what do you have coming up? First of all, Greg, what's going on with Laemmle Theaters now? What can we expect from you guys in the future? And we have this empty theater space here in Redlands. I'm telling you. I mean, it could use I would love it. Laemmle Theater. We'll help you program it. I'll tell you. I'll oversee it. It's just down the street. They pulled out all the theater seats and turned it into a wedding venue. I want an art house cinema in Redlands. We got a lot. We got a college here. Come on, man. You got one in Claremont.
We do.
Come on. Laemmle's Redlands Fox Theater.
I love it.
So I'm gonna hit you up, by the way. But so, dude, what's going on with Laemmle's now, and your venues around LA are still chugging along, and as I said, if you want to see a French zombie movie that's a remake of a Japanese zombie movie, Final Cut is playing in Laemmle Theaters right this weekend. So after Barbenheimer or before Barbenheimer, go see Final Cut at the Laemmles here in the greater Southern California area. But what's going on with Laemmles? What can we expect, and where can people find you guys online? You've got a website, but are you personally, I know you're on Twitter. How can people track you down?
Yeah, I'm not super active on social media, but they can find Laemmle Theaters at www.laemmle.com. That's spelled Laemmle. And you've got, movies and showtimes and so on and so forth. We're operating 7 locations here in Los Angeles County. We're going to stay open as long as we can and bring the best of Hollywood and the world to Los Angeles. My favorite film of the year right now, A Fire, directed by Christian Petzold, who previously did Transit and Barbara and Phoenix.
Oh.
Fabulous films. Fire's his new movie, and it's great. Also, Past Lives, if you haven't seen it, is really worth seeing. And worth seeing in a movie theater, and frankly, not everybody loves Wes Anderson, but I think Asteroid City is really worth watching as well. And in one of the art house films that has broken through,
right,
some commercial success.
Raphael, what about you? What do you got going on? Where can people see you next? What you've been in 100 million TV shows, in movies, and all that, and it is the 40th anniversary of Risky Business this year.
Right. We just had the big event at a Laemmle Theater, actually, which was lovely. A whole bunch of the cast, and Paul Brickman and John Evans, Rebecca Horney. Anyway, it was that's fun. I mean, I'm this movie being on DVD is a lovely thing. Some people might say, like, why DVD? Why does it matter? And in point in fact, actually, as we hear now stories of so-called studios, although they're tech companies in my mind, basically purging movies off of their servers for tax breaks. Holy Moses, when has it been more clear that physical media is so important? Those films are gone forever, and I'm happy that they got a tax break, for God's sakes. But the artistic kind of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making a movie, to have it just be purged for such a prurient reason is kind of devastating as I think about it. So I am particularly happy that Kino Lorber is really so excited about this movie, and that we get to work with them. That's thrilling. As an actor, I'm sort of not able to really tell you what I'm doing.
Right.
But I can say, I can point you to social media and say, take a look. There is something coming out in October. So forgive me because we're on strike. But I'm grateful for Rob, that you connected with this, and that you, as someone who is so substantial as a movie person, get it and understand it, and care about Greg and his family as much as I do, and understand why it's important, and that clearly your audience does as well. Again, whether you're in LA or not, if you care about movies, this is a wonderful story. If you don't care about movies and you care about family businesses, hopefully it'll speak to you. But the fact is that thank you for giving us such a wonderful sort of lift up.
Oh, well, I can't thank you both enough. And again, the movie, if you want to get the DVD, only in theaters. I would recommend it because, again, a shout out to Kino Lorber. Kino Lorber as a company kind of is doing what Laemmle Theater does for audiences who are going to the theatrical route. I mean, Kino Lorber, in all honesty, Matt from Kino Lorber called me up out of the blue and watches my physical media show. We do a show on Sunday, Let's Get Physical Media, where we celebrate physical media. And Matt, I didn't know Matt, and he said, we want to send you some discs, as you're always talking about Kino Lorber anyway. And I didn't realize the breadth. I mean, they've been putting out, they just put out Rin Tin Tin movies from the 1920s. Kino Lorber is putting out silent films. They're putting out foreign, like I said, I just watched an Israeli TV series I'd never heard of because he sent it to me in the same box that this came in. And shout out to Kino Lorber. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what their business model is, but God bless them, because they put out, you can even get a great Outer Limits box set of the original Outer Limits TV series from Kino Lorber. Their 4K restorations, as I said, even though it took over a year, they announced To Live and Die in LA. We've waited, but they have been putting out an incredible array of classic cinema, world cinema, as I said, all the way back from the teens. As a matter of fact, they just put out a movie, if I can just wax rhapsodic for a minute, that Abel Gance, who directed Napoleon, the 4-hour silent Napoleon, Abel Gance's first talking film, a French 1931 movie called End of the World. It's a science fiction movie. I thought I'd seen every science fiction movie ever made. I'd never even heard of this movie. Now I have to say, it's not great. And It has a troubled production history. He had it taken away from him, not unlike what happened to the Magnificent Ambersons to Orson Welles. But still, they put it out with a slipcase, and it was awesome. I'm like, oh my God! Abel Gance made a science fiction movie, and it's in French. It's the first talking French film that had sync sound. So, who put it out? Kino Lorber. I don't know how many people are buying it, but they put it out. So, God bless Kino Lorber for putting out this disc. And I have to say, you've got additional interviews with Anna DuVernay and Cameron Crowe and Leonard Maltin that are on the disc that are not in the movie. Your audio commentary is there. So go buy one more time, get the only in theaters, and see it. It's a great American story, a great family story, a great story about cinema, a great story about immigrants. It's just a great story in general. And I can't thank you both enough. You're going to fall in love with Greg and his entire family. You want to think once you see the movie, everybody thinks that the Laemmle family, like, you want to hang out with them. Like, I was going to, now that I've got Greg's email, I'm like, dude, can I come visit you in Seattle when I come see my mom? Absolutely. I'll bring my mom. We'll go to Temple D. Hirsch and go to Purim or something. But thank you very much, and thank you both for coming on, and thanks, Matt from Kino Lorber, for making it possible. So, thank you all very much. I will let you go. Thanks for being on Robservations, gentlemen.
Thanks, Rob. So appreciate it. Yeah.
Really great to have you both.
Great to meet you.
I'll see you later. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, that was a fantastic conversation. I want to thank both Greg Laemmle, his whole family, and Raphael Sbarge. Please, one more time, I can't recommend Only in Theaters enough. As I said, by the way, for those of you who think, Rob, you're always talking about Blu-ray and 4K, DVD is still the biggest selling physical media format. And this is a great looking DVD. It was really well mastered. It is beautiful. So pick it up. And in case you are wondering, Kino Lorber is currently having a summer sale. And you can shop over 500 titles for as low as $4.99. And of course, as I said before, you can get The Manchurian Candidate in 4K. Let's play a little game of solitaire, directed by John Frankenheimer. And you can also get John Frankenheimer's Ronin. And this 4K edition of Ronin, chef's kiss. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that it was promised for a long time. Some people thought it would never come out. But thanks to Kino Lorber, you can get Hurricane Billy's superlative 1985 film To Live and Die in L.A., which I saw at the King Cinema in Seattle, across the street from the late lamented UA-150 that used to be on 6th and Blanchard till they blew it up. But I drove in from Evergreen State College, 70 miles to see the first show of this at the King Cinema, because we remember where we saw those movies. Why I'm obsessed with this movie, I don't know. Elizabeth still wants to know why I have Blu-rays from every country it was released in. And now I have the Kino Lorber 4K. So thanks, everybody, for watching this. We're not quite done yet. We have some things to get through. Anonymous sent in a tip and said, as someone who works in a side of the entertainment business that also requires butts and seats, I didn't see this. I'm sorry I didn't see this during the show. Can you offer some advice in local marketing? When our product is in Middle America right now, we are not doing well. Thanks. Listen, I can offer some insight into that. As you know, I produced and edited the feature film Tango Shalom. And in order to our distributor, Vision, they did a fine job distributing the movie, but we didn't have a marketing budget. We didn't have, especially we were opening, luckily, inexplicably, we were opening in Times Square at the AMC in Times Square, which was amazing. But, we really did a grassroots marketing campaign. A lot of the people that were in the movie were from New York City. So we got them, we printed out flyers and postcards, and we literally had people walking down the street handing out flyers and cards. We were doing online marketing. I was using this platform to exploit the film coming out and getting people to go. I mean, I think when you're opening, it really does come down to guerrilla marketing tactics. And the thing is, it's really difficult. What you want to be able to do is convert. People watch shows and they something, so and so's coming to my channel, or they're coming to your town. Like whether it's a movie, whether it's a concert, whether it's an art installation, whatever it is. It's not enough just to watch some show tell you about it. You have to figure out a way to convert. And the way to convert is you have to set. This is just the setup. Like what I would say is go to Kino Lorber right now, who's ever watching this, and buy. Because first of all, support Raphael, support Greg. If you can't go see a movie in a Laemmle theater, buy this documentary. It supports all kinds of things. It supports Kino Lorber. It supports Raphael's efforts. And it's just go. But you have to also concentrate on guerrilla marketing. And that's boots on the ground. That's literally figuring out who your audience is and go to places that your audience goes to. I know it seems silly, but putting up flyers wherever, asking if you can do that, most people are pretty open to it. But yeah, so guerrilla marketing, following up any kind of social media interaction. Let's see. Glenn Mark says, Rob, I was pleasantly surprised to see a Jacques Tati film score on your playlist. Please wax lyrically about Jacques Tati films. They must never be forgotten. Well, Monocle Playtime, I mean, I'm a huge Jacques Tati fan. If you really see, I mean, Playtime is such a great movie. Look, I would say this. There are a lot of great French, we're talking about art house and everything that Greg Laemmle and the Laemmle theater chain has stood for 80 years, is finding some of those great art house films, you know, and Jacques Tati is one of, I mean, one of the great filmmakers ever, really, not just a French filmmaker. But if you haven't seen any Jacques Tati movies, you should. Now, let me give you a few. First of all, Mr. Hulot's Holiday is something that you know, maybe you should see. He made a movie called Traffic that I think is very, very good. That's later in his career, but see Playtime. Playtime is probably the movie that everybody knows. I don't know if I'm my uncle Monocle. That's a great movie too. So My Uncle and Playtime, check that out. And Mr. Hulot's, or Les Vacances. I mean, the vacation of Mr. Hulot, but Mr. Hulot's Holiday, as we know it in America. Fantastic films. So, Science Lady, our favorite Science Lady, says, great interview, Rob. Watching old movies is important. Take care. Got to go and get ready to see Oppenheimer. Hope you have a fantastic day. Well, thank you, Science Lady. Thanks for watching. I'm glad you liked the interview. What a thrill to have both Greg and to have Raphael here. It's so funny because Raphael seems like such a gentle soul, but the first time I saw him on screen, you know, he was the stud of his high school, and he brings a very cute girl over to Tom Cruise's house, and he's like, I heard your parents were out of town. And this girlfriend, who's so cute, is like, we have nowhere else to go. If you guys haven't seen Risky Business, first of all, why? It's as topical. They could probably never make that movie today, which it's my favorite teen film of the 80s, written and directed by Paul Brickman, Tangerine Dream score, one of the greatest uses of Prince's DMSR in a movie ever, Muddy Waters' Manish Boy. Go see Risky Business if you haven't. I wish that Warner Brothers would put the 4K out. It is their 100th anniversary. Come on, Warner Brothers. Where's my 4K of Risky Business? See that. Irene Jobson asks, how was the PGS meetup? The PGS meetup was awesome. So for those of you who don't know, Post-Geek Singularity meetup we had yesterday at the Tiki Bar at outside of in the patio area behind the Marriott Marina, which is kind of for me my home away from home at the San Diego Comic-Con. And I run to the bathroom, I come back, and the great legendary Todd McFarlane is just hanging out at our table talking. Gotham Geek Girl was there and her lovely boyfriend. Sonny Dominguez was there. I mean, it was just a great. We had a great time, and you can watch the video. I put up an impromptu video. I don't know how well you can hear it. I haven't even watched it yet on the channel, so you can check that out. It was up there yesterday. Look at that; it's still there. So, yeah. And Glenn Mark. Oh, we already said Ernest Rister. Ernest Rister says, I ended my essay on Empire of the Sun saying it's never too late to rediscover film. By the way, one of the joys of this channel is other people that have shared their experiences. Ernest Rister's his essay on Spielberg's Empire of the Sun is one of the great film essays I've read. And Ernest, send me the link to that again, or put the link in the live chat, because I love that. I love that. First of all, Ernest says, Dear Rob, Earl of Erudition, to apologize for the deep cut of Pete's Dragon. Try this one on. Try this one on for size. While not on the scale of Empire of the Sun, what are your thoughts on Walter Hill's Crossroads? I love Crossroads. I love Walter Hill's Crossroads. So there is so Crossroads stars Karate Kid himself, Ralph Macchio, and and it is about the legend, the great jazz legend, the idea of going down to the crossroads, so to meet the devil, and so the great blues musician Robert Johnson, the legend was, he went down and made a deal with the devil, and for talent. It's kind of like Charlie Daniels. Devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. He was in the bond. He was way behind. He was looking to make a deal. When he came across this young boy sewing on the fiddle and playing it hot, the devil jumped on it. Some boy, let me tell you what. Guess you didn't know it, but I'm a fiddle. Well, I don't know. I'm a fiddle player too. If you care to take that dare, I'll make a bet with you. You play a pretty good fiddle, boy, but give the devil his due. I bet a fiddle of gold against your souls. I think I'm better than you. Boy said, I won't sing the whole song. I'll get demonetized. I'm already demonetized, I'm sure. So I love Crossroads. Crossroads deals with that legend, and the movie's dope. And it's got, Steve Vai plays the devil's guitar, basically, at the end. It's great. And if you haven't seen Crossroads, you should see it. I love that movie. And Ernest Rister goes on to say, I ended my essay on Empire of the Sun saying it's never too late to rediscover a film. I can't argue that Crossroads is some sort of buried Arkenstone, but sure, like the verdict, go check it out. Look, here's the thing about Crossroads. It's wildly entertaining, and it deals with a blues legend. And here's the thing. Walter Hill probably would never be mentioned in the great pantheon of directors. However, that said, I love Walter Hill, and say what you want, but this movie, as everyone knows, is one of my favorite movies. I love this movie. By the way, this is a great, I know it's only 12 scale, but it's a collection of four Swan and Ajax and the Baseball Furies. You gotta. I love Walter Hill. Walter Hill's movies, even when they're not as successful, they're always wildly entertaining. Also Walter Hill and David Giler talking to Alien. Alien wouldn't exist without Walter Hill. But Crossroads is a great movie. 48 Hours, of course, probably the one everybody knows. The Warriors. You know what's a great movie? Southern Comfort. And speaking of family, if you want to see a great movie that is full of actual brothers, like the Quaid brothers and the Carradine brothers, his movie The Long Riders, with an amazing Ry Cooder score. Check that out. It's really, really good. You'll really like that. And Science Lady said, forgot to add foreign movies. Oops, you never forget to add anything. It's all good, Science Lady. You can do no wrong in my eyes. And Derek has become a member of the channel. I think I'm all caught up. But yeah, so at any rate, I'm going to end this early morning or Robservations stream. I will be back at Comic-Con this Sunday for the Starship Smackdown, a crazy panel we started in 2002 that we're still doing. So come see us at Starship Smackdown. Yeah. And I want to give, again, a tremendous thanks to Kino Lorber and Matt at Kino Lorber. Matt at Kino Lorber reached out to me in the first place because he liked our show Let's Get Physical Media, which you can watch with Dieter Bastian and myself all the way from Saarbrücken, Deutschland. There's not going to be one this weekend because I will be at the convention. But Matt from Kino Lorber reached out to me because he liked the show. Matt's been sending me stuff, which is very kind of him. Although Matt, I've been getting everything early except to live and die in LA. I know, it's an ongoing joke. But Matt, thank you very much for setting this up. Again, I want to thank Greg Laemmle for being legendary. I've only known him for a couple days, but he is legendary. I want to thank his wife and his entire family for allowing Raphael Sbarge to make this movie only in theaters, because it is truly a delight. And it's emotional, and it's about so many things that I like. It's about families, it's about legacy, it's about business, it's about the art of cinema. It's also about bravery in the face of adversity. It really is. It's about all those things. And at the end of the day, this is the documentary equivalent of like Cinema Paradiso. And if you haven't seen Cinema Paradiso, watch that. There's a 4K version of it, and you should get it and watch it, because Cinema Paradiso, as a matter of fact, watch Cinema Paradiso and watch this as a double bill. If you're home, buy this DVD from Kino Lorber and buy Cinema Paradiso wherever you can get it, and watch it as a double bill. It'll tell you, you'll fall in love with the power of cinema all over again. And yeah, on that note, so thanks to Kino Lorber. And remember, Kino Lorber is having a summer sale right now. And look, you can get The Longest Yard. And their selection of 4Ks, again, The Manchurian Candidate and Ronin, a great Frankenheimer double bill. And you know what they're putting out? You know what Kino Lorber is putting out on 4K? And you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. But it's a movie that I adore. I saw it 4 times in theaters. That's right. The Sylvester Stallone directed sequel, I kid you not, to Saturday Night Fever. Staying Alive. Much maligned. Finola Hughes from General Hospital. If you haven't seen Staying Alive, people laugh at it. It's not Saturday Night Fever. It's different. Kino Lorber's putting it out on 4K, and I will proudly play mine. But Kino Lorber's been crushing it in the 4K realm. Not to oversell them, go to the Kino Lorber summer sale and go buy some stuff. And you know what? Look into their classic cinema, because, man, they're killing it when it comes to classic stuff. As I said, that Abel Gance movie, End of the World, it's incredible. And I mean, the movie's not incredible, but it's incredible that they put it out. I mean, again, show your kids Rin Tin Tin, silent Rin Tin Tin movies from the 20s. Kino Lorber's got you covered. Anyway, on that note, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel via super chats, tips, memberships, and all that. And once again, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. The Laemmles family story is documented and only in theaters, which you can get on DVD from Kino Lorber. Maybe they'll put this out in 4K. Hey, come on, Kino Lorber. Why only a DVD? Where's the 4K? I want a 4K. Those widescreen interviews will look great in 4K. But anyway, thanks to Raphael Sbarge. Thanks for Greg Laemmle for being here. Thank you all. And we'll be back tonight for Midnight Musings. And Lael Rockwell and I, we will wax rhapsodic about Barbenheimer and get out to the movie theaters. And on that note, don't forget, today at 2 o'clock, we have another episode from Israel, King Tannic himself, of The Otaku Experience.
Hey, my name is King. If you don't know who I am, my name is Israel King. I'm a writer, director, and anime commentator on my main channel, King Tannic. Now, if you've been a fan of pop culture for any amount of time, then you surely must have noticed the sudden rise in popularity in anime and manga. Films breaking box office records, series topping the most pirated show of the year chart, and of course, the very apparent fan base that has surrounded it. According to a poll back in February of this year, about 50% of Gen Z watches anime. Now, if you're not Gen Z, it can be kind of hard not knowing anything about this new, sudden, very popular corner in the pop culture zeitgeist. And that's where we come in. King Tannic and the Burnettwork have partnered to bring you the best anime and manga related news show on YouTube. The Otaku Experience is your go-to place to find out the biggest stories of the week in the anime and manga industry. Still not convinced? Try the show out for yourself. The show airs Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time or 5 p.m. Eastern. The Otaku Experience, only on the Burnettwork.